You know the drill. It's a Sunday. That means we're getting you ready for a juicy, and in this case, 8-game slate, MLB live before lock style. Eric Lindquist, myself, Jordan. So 2 of the 3 of us have been up at ungodly hours on the West Coast, and we're only asking one thing really in return right now. We may ask more throughout the show, but if you're already hanging, if you see people coming in, then your duty, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe across the board. We'll talk about a bunch of things beyond baseball, I'm sure. Mr. Lindquist, how are you, sir? Good morning. It's afternoon where I am. It's a beautiful day where I am, but good morning to you and everyone else out there in the West Coast.
Oh, well, thank you so much. What is this headphone look we have going on? We have like is this like what the cool kids do now, or am I missing something? Okay,
so this is how I've worked in radio for now over 2 decades. And
okay. So I'm the asshole now in this scenario.
No. I'm glad you asked, because somebody in the chat is probably continuing what you're saying and making fun of me. Like, what does this guy think he's DJ Shander or some shit like that? Because, you know, the
DJ Shander. 99.7, the Harley radio station.
Actually worked for 99.7 in Nashville. That's funny you brought that up. See, look at that. You didn't even know that. No. But in this case, it allows me to listen to what you're saying and hear. It's just force of habit whenever I have these type of headphones on, because I want to hear what's happening in the studio. I want to hear what's happening outside around me. In this case, if there's any collateral damage, which could be a young child coming through, I want to make sure that I hear it ahead of time.
Look at that.
It doesn't hit this range. That's
all right. So it's a true professional move that you have going right now. I looked at it and I was just like, oh, he's DJing at a set in Long Island or something this weekend.
See?
So, all right.
That's where you wanted to go. DJ. You wanted to make fun of me. And
DJ Shander.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's what you get when you have the ear off a little bit, right?
I love it. Yeah, I'm here for it. Hey, I got to hear you sing this morning. It's already been a successful morning.
Did you? What was I singing?
Just now, whatever that is.
That's just a noise. That's not really singing. That's not me belting out Celine Dion. Let that happen before you.
Oh, man. If we get to like 300 likes, can you sing Celine Dion to end the show?
I don't know Celine Dion. So
come on.
Me words, I'll do it. If we get to 1,000 likes
kiss
by the end of the
like
show.
This, and then I touch you like that. It was so long ago. But... Come on now. You know it's all coming back to me now.
Well, it is. I could see it and I could hear it coming back to you now. And I love that, by the way, that play there. But now we need a new song because you just did Celine Dion. So the whole idea was to tease up to it, and you couldn't help yourself. You said, you know what? Let me get that spotlight right back. That's what
the bots showed up, and so I had to one up them. Whenever the bots show up, you got to do weird stuff.
Oh man! Well, Neil Orfield almost took his shirt off one show, and then 2 straight weeks we had sex bots left and right. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got suspended Tuesday, Wednesday for taking shirts off, according to Gregory Ehrenberg.
Wait a second. Before we jump into our 8-game slate, which we will have plenty of juicy time to do so, think of it like the tenderized.
You said juicy twice. It's a word that makes me uncomfortable.
Why?
I hate the word juicy.
Moist?
No, moist doesn't bother me for some reason. Juicy is not good.
All right.
It's like a big, juicy hot dog. It's like, I don't like that.
Well, what if you use juicy to describe something else besides a hot dog or other than a hot dog?
Still no.
Okay. Look, forget how juicy or moist this slate may be. Why don't we just dive into it? You don't even like moist.
Let's do that. I don't.
Moist is brownie. Think brownies. Yeah. Moist brownies, okay?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me nearly as much as juicy for some reason, though.
All right. Don't eat any hot dogs. Don't eat any brownies. Don't even eat the chili in Washington, D.C., okay? I'm telling you, somebody who lived down there, I know. And let's start there. D.C., Rockies in town, all right? So when you look at this slate, and you'll sprinkle in your overall thoughts throughout, by all means. But let's start here. We've got Freeland and Gray on the mound. And, just looking at it from, I guess, DK to FanDuel, kind of a pitching matchup first. We'll get into some stacks in a second here. But how appealing when you see Gray, there's a little bit, or not Gray, when you see, the other Gray, there's a little bit of some leverage here that you can work with. So where are you with as far as maybe low or high cost options on this slate? Both of these guys being low cost.
Yeah, I mean, low cost, 80 degrees out there in Washington today, wind blowing out slightly. It's basically non-existent, but The Josiah Gray and Colorado Rockies side, I'm going to be on both of them. And I think you look at the top stacks tool, this is a spot where it's very obvious that you kind of want to get a little bit of both. I'm looking at the 25.5% K percentage for Josiah Gray in the mid-range. I think that that's something that I'm trying to target. There's slight positive leverage. He's about appropriately owned. But I think on DraftKings at 7,300, I feel more comfortable rostering him. I know there's more positive leverage to be had going to like Marcus Stroman, Miles Michaelis for other people who like to point that one out. Even Bruce Zimmerman has some positive leverage too, a little bit cheaper, but none of those guys above or below him really feel as high of upside options as what Josiah Gray is. So when you get him right, you're going to be getting paid off for it with the 25.5% K percentage this season. I think Colorado, outside of Colorado, we can still look at some of these bats against Josiah Gray. It's a decent enough game environment. So pretty obvious on that one that I'm going to get to both sides of it. Kyle Freeland, I don't really see that I want to be doing anything with him specifically. There is positive leverage. He's only 2.5% on the DraftKings slate, but I can't imagine that either one of these guys are going to be guys you want to get to in any kind of a massive capacity. Much more inclined to play Josiah Gray on FanDuel. If you're playing over there today, Josiah Gray 7,700. He's garnering 4% ownership, has a little positive leverage. I think that's a decent enough option going up against Colorado outside of Coors, but neither of these pitchers are over the top, over the moon type appealing options.
Yeah, and I imagine FanDuel, if it's not appealing to you as a P2 on DraftKings, it's probably long shot material on FanDuel, if at all.
Yep. Yeah, okay. It's just really not. Yeah, but Josiah Gray's sub 8K and just gives you a completely different roster construction in terms of stacks, but I will say one of the tough things is that if you're going to be paying up for bats, you're probably paying up for chalky spots. And that makes it a little bit more difficult unless you're going to find a way onto Yankees bats that are expensive and just facing the best pitcher on the slate.
Okay. So looking at that, really with both Freeland and Gray here, now there's some opportunities to work some bats, and we're not in Colorado, but still some decent projected run totals as you have here across the board on this 8-game slate. So with the Rockies Nationals, let's start with the Rockies bats and how different it may be, obviously being away from home now in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're outside of Coors Field, it's a substantial downgrade, but I will say Colorado's been decent enough under all circumstances this season. I mean, the NL West is just, it's a gauntlet top to bottom. You've got CJ Cron starting to play like the CJ Cron circa 2019 with the Minnesota Twins. That's good times for the Colorado Rockies because he's very good at hitting baseballs hard. I think that I'm just looking at this entire lineup is one I want to get to a lot against Josiah Gray. I said I like both sides of it. I think Colorado's the most positively leveraged stack to get to in the top stacks tool. That makes them unavoidable for me to play tons of. When you think about 9.8% top stack potential, Minnesota garnering much more attention at 9.6%. Washington garnering way more attention than I was expecting against Kyle Freeland there, only an 8.8% top stack potential. And then you go above to Boston or Cleveland. It's only about a 1 or 2% difference in terms of top stack potential, but you're going to see exponentially more ownership going their direction. The two most owned teams on the slate in Boston and Cleveland. So Colorado is going to be a big stand for me. I currently have a 14% number next to their name. I might bump that up even a little bit here. I'm just kind of finishing up one of my some of my one-offs and how I'm going to piece together certain guys because I don't want to play too much of like the Bucks and the extremely popular type one-offs. I've been very vehemently against here of late and trying to figure out ways to get a little bit different. And, Juan Soto is going to be another guy who pops up in a lot of one-up type builds. So I'm finding ways to just make them parts of the stacks and then finding different ways to get one-offs. And if I'm going Colorado bats, yeah, you've got some expensive pieces to get, but I think that it's a little bit easier for me to get away from those expensive one-offs.
All right. And, looking again with Washington is kind of reference here in this game, you're not gaining any leverage, a little negative leverage score. It's not terrible here because we do have them projected as both stacks pretty decent, but it's just a matter of how you're working really ownership compared to the field for both.
Yeah, this is a really tough spot for me to want to get at the field on a Washington team because you get Juan Soto, again, Kyle Freeland on the mound. Juan Soto left on left doesn't really matter for him. Nelson Cruz, notorious long-term lefty killer, but we've seen some regression in his game. I still believe with his 46.2% hard hit percentage, 507 expected slugging here on the season, that he can find some type of form here. I'm not going to completely write him off here, but top to bottom, I know that we've gotten some utility out of this stack of late, but it's just really not that appealing to me when they're going to be as popular as what they are. I mean, just going through some of the ownerships on individual hitters, Lane Thomas, 2,600 is getting 20.5% ownership. Juan Soto around 15% with Cruz. Cesar Hernandez, 11.5%. Josh Bell has had some regression here this season. Switch hitter, 10.5%. We're just seeing a very popular team. The only two bats that are sub 9% right now are Alcides Escobar and Victor Robles, which is completely understood because they're terrible at hitting. So I absolutely want to get away from this stack at its current ownership.
Yeah, it makes sense. And look, let's kind of shift if we can here to our next game, because it doesn't sound like we want to scrape anything more on either side with the pitching matchup or even the stacks, depending on where they're projected. Also, where you're not getting to them. So we've got the Marlins and Braves, Atlanta, Fried, Hernandez kind of going at it here. So let's start on the mound and really how you're attacking either of these guys.
Yeah, pretty much gonna be sorry, let me pull this up quick. I'm got this Miami thing uploading quick.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
No, it's fine. I'm just getting it pulled up here. Max Fried, just looking at the top pitchers tool. I mean, it's a decent enough spot if you want to get some shares, but he's very, very popular compared to his top percentage for FanDuel purposes. I mean, I'm looking at him being the highest chances of being a top pitcher there, 8.5%, but 19.1% ownership. I would much rather just find ways to Corbin Burns, and that we'll get to him later. Shane McClanahan, I'm going to be just making another large stand on. I'm going to be getting to some of these value stacks quite a bit today, just because of how much I do love the upside of Corbin Burns under owned, Shane McClanahan under owned against the Yankees. This is not your typical Yankees lineup, we'll put it that way here of late, but I just think that those top end pitching options, I'd rather find a way for them on FanDuel. On DK, I'm definitely going to have him in the portfolio. Max Fried's just fine at 9,200, but going over owned, you pretty much only have three pitchers you need to be even remotely concerned of. And I'm going to be shorting Tristan McKenzie in such a prominent way that it's all right for me to have a little bit of Max Fried in my 150. So I would say that he's just fine, but I want to be very conscious of who I'm going to be putting him in stacks with.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the ownership there, it's 27.8%, and definitely something that you want to work with here because he's one of the least leverage pitchers that you could really work with by all means. So makes sense on that end. And Hernandez, I mean, here, the difference is at 6,900, at least on DK, might be a workable P2 for you.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good. I mean, if this was a year ago, maybe I'd feel a little bit better. Alicia Hernandez, he's okay, but 21.1% K percentage. It's not like there's that much upside going his direction. Back in 2020, limited sample, but we had a 32.1% K rate for him, just a 4.7% walk rate. I mean, he was really, really good. 3.23 expected ERA. It's since gone 23.6% in 2021, followed by 21.1% this season. It's just in such a steady decline here. It's not the spot where I want to go picking on Atlanta bats too often. So I'm probably going to have a little bit. Currently have 6% in my last build, but I can't imagine you look at him as any kind of a priority on any slate. Actually, no, I have 2%. There we go. So yeah, he's definitely not going to be a piece that I'm in any way, shape, or form relying on.
Yeah, just making sure, man. We need to cover
totally.
all our.
I got you. I was double checking myself, really.
Yeah, and you were covering all your bases. That's really what you were doing.
This is very nice. This has like a coffee shop vibe with you today. I like this. We've got the guitar in the background, the headphones on, literally sipping coffee. This is
well, I went for it as you referenced it. I figured, why not? And yeah, I'm on a little angle here so that you can get the full ambiance behind me because the green screen's up today. So I want to make sure that you have everything, that it's not just me and my ugly mug and the white headphones to bring back out the guitar behind me. That's the whole goal here, Lindquist. Everything has a plan.
Well done.
Just like my headphones, off my ear a little bit. There you go. DJ Lindquist in the house. All right, man. So let's move to the bats here. And, the difference, of course, is going to be, unlike last game, how much more you want to get to Atlanta. Now, we talked about both Washington and Colorado, who Alex have is pretty high as far as projected, two of the top 5-6 stacks. Atlanta is there. Miami's going to be all the way at the bottom. So you're going to have a little bit of positive leverage. You're not really losing anything with Atlanta. It's just how much you're going to be to the field. Both, again, you're going to have some ownership to work around, but Atlanta clearly is going to have a higher top stack percentage today.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta between these two teams, I don't really know what we need to say about Miami. I'm not making them. I'm not getting to almost anything for Miami. It's starting
Yeah.
to get warmer again in Atlanta. The humidity's starting to get up 84 degrees there at first pitch. Wind's blowing in slightly there, but Atlanta's a major favorite here for a reason. Max Fried on the mound. I can't imagine that I'm going to get to much of anything here from Miami as I'm finishing up lineups here over the course of the next hour. But the Atlanta side, I think that's definitely where we're going to have more interest. And Ronald Acuna up at the top of this lineup again. Good to see him continuing to stay somewhat healthy here, because he got hit on the wrist, ends up getting picked off at first. It was just a bad overall day there for Ronald Acuna, but he's back in the lineup, so I'm all right getting to as much of him as possible. Even at 14%, I mean, he's lower owned than the likes of a Buxton, lower owned than the likes of a Soto. Yeah. So getting to him as a one-off might be a better opportunity if you're going to look for one of those guys to be paying up for. Matt Olson, Austin Riley, really jumping for me in terms of power numbers. That shouldn't surprise anybody whatsoever. And Dansby Swanson getting that lineup upgrade to the 2-hole here of late. Having that be kind of the new situation for Dansby Swanson just makes it a little bit easier at a shortstop position to find room for him in stacks. William Contreras has been smashing baseballs, but batting eighth. Hard to really pay 5,200 in one-off type scenario, but definitely want to have pieces of him in these Atlanta stacks. So it's a team that I'm getting to a fair amount.
All right. And I think it's just to reference here, we only have 8 games on this slate. And while Miami, you referenced, just forget them, 3.3 projected run total here. But the Braves do have a 4.9 projected run total. And it's definitely something that, even though they're gaining some ownership, you reference the way to play them, and definitely not one to be overlooked, not ignored, but just overlooked.
Yeah, that's where we're Atlanta. It's basically flat leverage going their direction. But if you just go individually by hitters, I mean, you have an opportunity to get a 1% William Contreras at batting eighth at 5,200. Again, it's just a massive pay up to be contrarian type spot. But when you're trying to target ceiling and when you're trying to target power, I mean, he's got it. So Ozzie Albies batting 7th now at 5K. I mean, nobody's going to be clicking on that. That's 5% for Ozzie Albies. Travis d'Arnaud, another catching option. You'd have to double up on FanDuel if you wanted to do that. I'm probably not going to be doing that so much. Never the most appealing thing. But on DraftKings, if you go the Travis d'Arnaud route, 4,600, a little bit cheaper, you can make way for him. There's one or two cheap pitchers that I like decent enough at the SP2 spots on DK that I'm going to get to some of them here. But just looking at this lineup, 1 through 8, very, very viable.
Would it help if Jordan took some of his original music that sounded more like coffee shop theme-esque and played it underneath? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a little background type vibe going. Shout out Michael Harris as well. He's not available, I believe, on the FanDuel slate. I don't think he's available there. Maybe he is. Terry, remind me if he is or not, but he's 2K flat on DraftKings batting ninth. He had a 305, 372, 506 slash line with 5 homers. 11 stolen base is a AA. So obviously he's not going to be, I don't think, a transcendent type talent here, but the man is 2K batting ninth. So if you're trying to stack up Atlanta, no problem if you want to try to get that cheap exposure in order to get to the likes of a McClanahan or a Burns.
Baltimore, anything at all that's worthy of even like a one-off that you can pick off with Miami? I know you mentioned that you just have zero interest from a stack standpoint, but either site here, is there anything that you can work with?
Yeah, I could always. I mean, how much revenge does Jorge Soler have in his heart for half a season and a World Series championship against Atlanta? I'm guessing none. I can't imagine. It basically got him paid. So his life's much better because of it. But he's 5,500. Jess Chisholm's 5,500. I'm playing primarily on DK today, and so I find there's no paths to getting to this stack. I just can't do it today.
Not a multi-home run day from Soler is what you're saying.
Even if you got it, though, I mean, here's the thing. You stack them up
not
completely. You're basically saying, all right, mid-range pitching, go nuts. Every batter that I primarily want to get to in the stack is just way, way overpriced for facing Max Fried in this spot. So it's a pretty hard pass for me on Miami.
All right, Bruce Zimmerman and Nick Pivetta, a little bit more clearly, not a total spend up, but at 7,800, you're going to be spending obviously a little more than you will with Zimmerman for Pivetta. But we talked about projected run total for Atlanta. You've got a full run more for Boston. So we don't want to bury the lead by any means. We'll start with the pitchers, but we don't want to bury the lead by any means. And that this, at least with Boston, expected to be pretty high run total here. Baltimore 4-3, so they're not flatline like a Miami in the low threes. Expected runs, to say the least, in this game on both sides, most of it coming from Boston. So that may put Zimmerman at the bottom, if not out for you, depending on how much you want to counter the field, but also make Pivetta kind of an interesting option.
Yeah, I mean, I like both sides of this one too. I think Pivetta against Baltimore, would it surprise anybody if he had a decent outing? This Baltimore lineup has been better than expected, but they're still just sporting an 89 WRC plus against right-handed pitching here. Or again, under all pitching circumstances for the season, excuse me. If you slash it by Baltimore right-handed pitching, good Lord, why is my computer taking forever today? 95 WRC plus, 133 ISO there in this circumstance. So I'm looking at them as being okay with their current implied team total. I mean, they're still sporting nearly a 3.8 here in this spot. Pivetta can give up some power time to time. We've seen that. So I'm okay getting to some Pivetta, but definitely going to be looking at some Baltimore bats to kind of mix and match in here as well. Bruce Zimmerman, it's just, he's going to get murdered. And I'm just nervous about how to piece together this Boston lineup and try to reduce any kind of ownership, because you really can't do it on DraftKings. It's a very tough spot. Devers is garnering 15%. JD Martinez right around 19. Trevor Story at 16. Xander Bogaerts 15. The only batter, Christian Arroyo, batting 8th. He's the only guy under 14% on this entire. Bobby Dahlbeck 12%, but yeah. I just find them to be really tough to want to stack up at their current ownership. I mean, Zimmerman is not good. I feel like he's going to get murdered. 553 expected slugging, just a 20.2% K percentage. But this team is just so popular in the context of the slate. I think I prefer playing them over stacking up Cleveland as it stands right now, but neither one of them I'm going to be getting to even half the field on today.
So if you're looking at getting to anything at all on FanDuel, we talked about Pivetta on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, you're spending up a little bit more. But if you just look at the guys who are in that 6+% for a top one pitcher, and granted, there's a little bit of a gap. I'm not trying to minimize where we have projected Corbin Burnes versus Pivetta. I mean, there's a 4+ % difference. But with that said, he is the cheapest option. We'll talk about Sonny Gray. We'll talk about even Stroman below him in a second here. But he is the cheapest of these options in there. And you still are going to gain some leverage to the field because he's Pivetta on a slate with Cease and Burnes and McClanahan. And so how can you work that if there's any interest with Pivetta on FanDuel, knowing that you may actually be able to gain some more leverage to the field here than you would on DK, where there's already some interest?
Yeah, there's a little interest on DK, but I still don't think it's market enough to not look at him on DK and play above the field on 11%. It's flat leverage. I mean, it's not like I'm playing a Dylan Cease who's crazy popular. It's definitely not like I'm playing a Tristan McKenzie who's very, very popular. So I have no problem for 200 more getting off McKenzie, going to Pivetta. I'm going to be shorting McKenzie quite a bit, even against Detroit. It doesn't feel good. I don't like it, but I'm going to have to, just at his current ownership. On FanDuel, I don't really think you have to think about it too much. He's going to be part of that pool. I can't imagine at 8,600 that he wouldn't be here. It's just north of a 23% strikeout rate. I said it before. He gives up the occasional power. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher, 17.6 degree launch angle here on the season. That's kind of what he's done his entire career, is give up some hard hit contact balls, but he can miss bats from time to time. This would actually be his lowest strikeout rate since 2019 if the season finished today, 2% lower. He's coming off of a season where he had a 26.5% K percentage over nearly 3,000 pitches. So I think that there's still room for some strikeouts here against Baltimore. That wouldn't shock anybody, but also wouldn't shock me to see him give up some long balls.
So let's look at this now from Boston's standpoint, just how to attack Bruce Zimmerman, knowing that a lot of people are out there looking to attack Bruce Zimmerman. And right?
Yeah, I said it before. I think he's going to die. Like, I just get the impression that he's going to get hit up in this spot. The Red Sox have been playing much improved baseball of late. They're still under 500. So for everybody ringing the bell that Boston's back, let's slow our roll down here a little bit. The Yankees are massive favorites in the division still. They should be massive favorites in this division still, especially if they have Cortez pitching as well as he is. Severino, who we'll talk about here in a second. This Boston team, though, is definitely starting to get it together here. Kike still sub 4K, 3,700. I don't mind if you want to get to quite a few shares of him as kind of a salary savings option to get up to the Burns and McClanahans and guys on the top end. But he's going to be popular. I mean, he's almost 20%. And it just feels like every single slate now, Boston comes in higher owned than we're even projecting. So I'm just really kind of tempering my interest here. I'm cutting them in half right now. I'm getting to around 8% stacks. And right now, looking at their ownership, they're around 15, 16%. I wouldn't be surprised to see that number come in even higher. So if I'm stacking them up here in any kind of a way where I'm hand building something for a 3 max, I'm probably putting, as gross as it sounds, I'm probably putting Arroyo with his 103 ISO into play at 2,800. And that doesn't feel right to me because even Bobby Dahlbeck, 12%, has massive power numbers that are going to translate eventually, but still a 0.067 ISO on the season. These are just not the most appealing bats to be playing when they're chalk. So Bobby Dahlbeck, as much as I've been playing him over the course of the season, I know Terry's been playing him quite a bit, hanging out in chat there, but can't really get there at their current ownership today. I'm probably going to be shying away more than the field.
All right, over, under, before we move on to the next game here, over, under the 9% we have projected for Baltimore.
Over. We have them at 9% now. Did that just change? Wow. Okay, that did change. Again, I get it. Baltimore was a lot lower owned earlier in the day. When I started putting my research, started putting my stuff together this morning. Now around 9%, it's kind of an issue. But Pivetta, with the power numbers he gives up, 15th percentile in baseball. I mean, he's just a really he's just a feast or famine type guy. He will give up some hard contact. He will get strikeouts. So it's kind of a tough spot to be in. I think I'm going to be siding with the Baltimore bats still a little bit more, but I have shares at both sides. So I'm not going to say that it's a strong lean.
All right, let's move on to Detroit. And you mentioned Tristan McKenzie in reference here. And then on the other side is our 4K option of the night on DK. If you choose, if you choose, hey, look, I mean, there is a 1% ownership projection for Elvin Rodriguez. So are you over that percentage on D? Is he popping up as a P2 more than 1% of the time for you?
I mean, I love going to the 4K range and trying to make things happen. I still can't make it happen here with Elvin Rodriguez. It's an 8-game slate. And so sometimes you're like, oh, well, there's less pitchers for this 4K guy to have to be serviceable against. But I still think you need 15, 20 on this type of a slate from both of your pitchers on DK. There's too many guys with upside. Even a Josiah Gray, talked about how much I love Colorado. I could still see him fanning enough guys to maybe put up a decent score. And then the entire upper echelon of the board, I mean, everybody is averaging decent pitchers. Think of how good pitchers have been over the course of this season. And it's still not like 90, 95 degrees anywhere like it was 2 weeks ago in any of these game environments. But Elvin Rodriguez has a 9.39 ERA through 2 starts, a 1.57 whip. He is so bad that I find it it's really hard to talk myself into trying to make it. It's offensive. Yeah, I'm offended for him. I'm actually on behalf of his family going to apologize, for his existence in Major League Baseball, because I look at him as a guy. Generally, I would want to try to find shots for these 4K guys. I think I would take just about anybody else over him. The nicest thing I can say is that if he can find some kind of a way to survive, he got through 5 innings against Minnesota, 75 pitches. He gets 80 pitches and just survives against Cleveland, so be it. But this is just not an appealing strikeout spot either, going up against Cleveland. So it's so hard for me to want to click the button.
Look, if Elvin's family is anything like my own, you tell one of them that he sucks, they'll tell me something I don't know. So don't worry about offending anybody in Elvin's family. We'll just assume that it's the norm, which is those closest to you should be at least the most critical.
I always feel bad because here's the thing: like, you never know where life's going to take you, and we talk sports. You've been doing this 20 years. I've been doing this for a couple years now, yeah, I'm just saying that you never know who you're going to run into. And if you're walking down the street, I wouldn't recognize Elvin Rodriguez, but like, somebody might clip it and send it to him, and then you're basically dead in their lives. But you know what? I feel pretty safe to say Elvin Rodriguez, I'm not too worried about it.
Who is the most random professional athlete that you've ever run into in this world?
I mean, I've ran into a lot of random ones.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The most random.
CJ Miles was pretty random at a coffee bean in LA.
Okay.
That was pretty wild.
Okay. That is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Coffee
and Quentin
bean.
Richardson.
Q? Oh,
Q.
Love Q. Who doesn't love the Q?
Again, just walking down Hollywood Boulevard. Good times.
Well, yeah, I guess that's just like the norm there. Worldwide Wrestling was headquartered in Stamford when I was a kid, and there's a Stamford Mall, and you could just see Hulk Hogan randomly going into coconuts.
But that's not a random athlete. That's a super, super famous athlete. That'd be like me.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh,
like
I've ran into Kobe Bryant. That's
okay. That's
not
random.
Random. That's not random. He was at the Staples Center, and I met him. It's like that's not random.
I tried. Let's move on to the stacks.
That's not the definition of random, though. Chat, come on. Random is if you randomly run into somebody. If you run into Kobe Bryant at his place of work, that's not random.
I know. And that's what I'm saying is the athlete's stature did not matter, was not relevant to the question. The act of running into the athlete was the subject. That's why it was random. And you're right. It's a random encounter. So no, you can't say that you threw trash on the court. You had to go pick it up and Kobe Bryant moved around you. And that's how you interacted randomly with Kobe. That doesn't work.
No, it's not how it works.
Okay. What about with Cleveland? Anything working there?
So Cleveland's very, very popular. And again, I'm more inclined to play some Boston than I am some Cleveland at their current ownership numbers. If you play J-Ram as a one-off any day ending in Y, I don't blame you, but this is not a spot where he's going to be not popular. I mean, him and Devers at the top end, 6,100 and 5,600 respectively. I think it's going to be easier to land on some J-Ram than it is on some Devers. We'll see where the ownership kind of lands on both, because it could be one of those things you get to the end of the slate. You're like, oh, I guessed wrong on which one was going to be more popular. I'm just looking at our ownership. I see 22% on Jose Ramirez. I might find some ways to get to some more Devers than that kind of a result here. But it's so hard to look at the rest of this team. I mean, Oscar Gonzalez is a flat 2K. That's a smash. If he's going to be 10.4%, you want to be over that number. But I think that's kind of the main guy that I'm looking at. The rest of the team, I mean, Josh Naylor has had a put your hands up in the Naylor. He's been better than expected. 582 expected slugging. He will be batting cleanup today against any righty. Again, Elvin Rodriguez, do I think he survives this spot? No, but I'm just hoping that Cleveland isn't the team to just completely blast this slate out of the water. But my priorities go Jose Ramirez, Oscar Gonzalez, Josh Naylor, 1, 2, 3. I'll probably have a number of one-offs and 5 2s of those type of guys, but I will not be full stacking with the likes of Miles Straw, Ahmed Rosario. I'm just way below as a 5-man stack on DK today.
Chat gave you a 5 on the play on Naylor, by the way. They were looking for something a little different.
I thought it was decent.
Like I said, 5 out of 8. Not out of 10, 5 out of 8. So you can do the math.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I like Cleveland. It's just they're so popular too. And if you're going to make me pick one of the 2 chalky offenses on the top end, probably going to land
Makes
on
sense.
Boston. Actually, I just refreshed the top stacks tool. Now we're seeing Cleveland around a 13.3% ownership share. I mean, this is just how you have to be so sensitive to what ownership's going to be.
So it dropped already from 15?
It dropped. I mean, I just refreshed in the last 5 minutes. We had an update. How long ago? Could not have been that long ago whatsoever. Did it just change on your page too?
Yeah. So they're okay. So even more to your point, though, you just moved the line because as you were saying that, the 2 are even. And now Boston has moved ahead. Yeah, Cleveland dropped below Washington.
This is annoying. I mean, these are the 2 best spots. And I had 4% Cleveland. I had 8% Boston. Again, I'm just kind of building out here in Fantasy Cruncher, and it looks like I might need to flip-flop them here at this point. If Boston, because I said Boston seems like, we look at the numbers and they just seem like they end up super insanely popular at lock now. They're kind of like the Yankees of late. Where, now that the Yankees have more of a decrepit lineup and obviously a very, very tough spot today, but it feels like Boston has kind of become the team that's had really cake puff matchups. And so they end up just steamed up way, way higher than what I expect. I mean, we have a 4.5 implied total for Cleveland. We have a 5.2 for Boston. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to give me equal ownership on each, I'll take the Boston side. But doesn't look like it'll be equal ownership if we're starting to see Cleveland drop a little bit. And I did say before, I mean, that 3-4-5 for the middle of the Cleveland lineup, I can probably attach some bats on the other side of it here if need be, and they're not going to be as popular as a 5-man. But yeah, it's just kind of a weird spot. We need to be really paying attention to ownership closer to lock.
All right, let's move to Tampa. Hit the thumbs up as you know. Make sure you're subscribed here. You see Odd Shopper above Eric's head, so we want you subscribed there as well. Tons of stuff happening. We've got until the season ends. I know the Eastern Conference Finals felt like a month and a half alone, but until the NBA season ends, sharp plays. Ben Ross's now has a sharp pick of the day every single day, so you want to make sure you're subscribed to the Odd Shopper channel above us. Look at that. Jordan putting it up there so you can take advantage of our MLB odds and bets here. It's just fantastic.
Dude, bro, chill like Jordan Klein. Dude, bro, like chill.
Yep.
You have no idea what I'm talking about. No, you have no idea.
I just wanted to say that. I'm working on new material.
Do it with me. Dude, bro, chill like.
No, I refuse to say whatever.
Dude, bro, chill like. One time, Eytan, for the people.
1,000 likes. I'll sing it. I'll sing it in Celine Dion fashion. All right. How about that?
Dude, bro, chill like.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
that's
fine.
Pull some shit like that out of my hat. All right. Now, this next game, that's not a typo. All right. To whatever, however you're looking at me here, that's not a typo that way. Tampa Bay, New York. That's a projected. That's the team total right there. Pardon me. The game total right there on the board from the book, 6.5. Both teams super low projected totals on the DFS side. So let's just look at Severino and McClanahan. And I don't know how much you're going to even get to the stacks here from a bat standpoint, unless you're just looking to counter a bunch of the field who's staying away from them.
Yeah, Severino, flat ownership on Luis Severino against Tampa Bay. Sounds fun to me. That's a spot that I'm definitely going to be over the field on Severino. We bet him to win the Cy Young here a couple weeks ago when I was over in Arizona. And I mean, right now, Nestor Cortez, Justin Verlander getting lit up by Seattle definitely helped to a certain extent, but it is May 29th. So I'm not going nuts here yet, but Luis Severino, everything across the board looks pretty darn good for him. The worst thing is that this lineup can always be stacked in accordance to whatever handedness there is on the other side of it. So it's going to be a tougher spot, but my God, 215 expected batting average, 357 expected slugging with a 24.4% K percentage that I expect to just go up, considering he's been around 35-36% the last 2 seasons, even in a very, very limited sample size. But his last full season, 2018, 28.2% K percentage. I mean, we're going to see that 24.4% number continue to go up. I just know that for a fact. I feel pretty confident in saying with the high 90s fastball kind of returning here for Severino, that pitch is his bread and butter. He needs that to be working. Garner's around a 20% whiff percentage on a 4-seamer, which, isn't like certain fastballs in the league, but still for him, that's pretty decent because he has these off-speed offerings, the changeup, slider, cutter, that all are just put away pitches. So if the fastball is being located like he's been, we're in really good shape looking at Luis Severino long-term. So Tampa Bay, yeah, it's going to be hard to land on anything regarding them. It's going to be really hard to land on anything regarding New York as well. I mean, these are just 2 pitchers that I want to be massively over the field on today.
I mean, McClanahan, as far as just where the field is projected to everybody else, and I get it, he's the top spend-up option on the board, but just where he is compared to the rest of the field, if you are putting and we'll talk about Cease and Burns before we get out of here, no doubt, but if you're looking at those 3 as kind of in that similar tier, he's the best option. You're gaining the most leverage, and the spend up is not nearly going to cost you even the $700 difference. Now, you like Cease noticeably better than McClanahan. My whole point's moot.
No, I don't. I like McClanahan so much. I always have. I always will. 199 expected batting average, 37.4% K percentage. And I don't know if anybody looked at the back half of this Yankees lineup, but it is not good. Andujar, Hicks, Kiner Falefa, I mean, Higashioka, Gallo. There's only 2 massive strikeout bats that exist here. That's Gallo and Judge, 26 and 38.3% respectively. But for the most part, yeah, there's not a ton of case, but I just see so much success for him if he can get by 1 through 4. It's a different Yankees lineup to be looking at. And while there might be reduced strikeout stuff, because of the lower ownership on him, all your concerns kind of go away because that is a massive K percentage on this slate. I mean, we're talking 37.4%. There is no way that if the field is shying away just because it's the Yankees, that I'm not going to go massively overweight to 7.7%. I mean, on FanDuel, 7.7% chance of, or 7.7% ownership at 11K. If you're not over that number today in tournaments, I don't really know what we're doing here. Him and Corbin Burns, I mean, it's just on DK, those are going to be two guys that I just ride with pretty darn heavily because of their current ownership. And Burns has started to come up throughout this show. He's now negatively leveraged, whereas he was pretty flat before. But I mean, I look at Severino and I for sure look at McClanahan as guys to just get way over the field on.
Anything that, because we've got the 3 games left with a little more advantage from a stack standpoint. You referenced just how difficult it is to get overall to either one of these from a bat standpoint. So, and you were referencing again throughout when talking about both Severino and McClanahan. So is there anything else that maybe you want to scrape, or maybe it is just taking advantage of 2 to 3 man stacks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to play a lot of McClanahan, and it would be really stupid for me not to have at least one Aaron Judge, Gleyber Torres, Anthony Rizzo type deal where I put some of those guys together. But again, it's just not your everyday typical Yankees lineup. There's no Stanton. I mean, obviously that's fewer Ks that are going to exist in the lineup, but the power threat is gone 5 through 9. Really, Gallo in his current iteration batting 9th. How he has fallen down the board. So yeah, I would like to see Gallo batting 6th in order to be able to have more opportunities to rack it up, maybe one more appearance at the plate. But top to bottom, there are still going to be paths to success for McClanahan in Tampa Bay. So I'm going to have lots of him. He's going to be one of my largest stands of the day.
I don't know how many more of the family and outside ancillary jokes we could make about Zach Greinke, because we did it all with Elvin Rodriguez earlier, right? Are there any left?
I don't know. I'm not going after Zach Greinke's won Cy Youngs in his life and has had K percentages once upon a time.
At 4,900, he deserves some ridicule.
Yeah, he's not good anymore. Here's the thing, though. If you retired 5 years ago, Zach Greinke would have been just like, oh, he's incredible. But because some of these guys pitched longer, I mean, they're not Tom Brady. We now expect everybody to freaking be Tom Brady as they age. No, you're going to get worse in a sport like baseball. Eventually, you're going to be incapable of doing what you did before. The guy is an 11.3% K percentage. He's throwing just soft pitch softballs. I mean, it's 88-mile-an-hour fastball is where he's topping it out at. He's basically throwing some weird stuff to try to counteract it. Slider, curve. He's not generating any swings and misses, but he can still just kind of get by for the most part, but not really even. I mean, a 5.69 expected ERA. He's just a 38-year-old pitcher who doesn't have anything left in the tank. I mean, he's been so good for almost 20 years. I mean, he was drafted in 2002. That's 20 years ago, yo. Like, this is not shocking that he would not be generating swings and misses at this point in his career. Not everybody's Verlander, not everybody's Tom Brady in whatever capacity you want. So, Zach Greinke, I'm not going to do it. I've recommended
all this
him on
to say no
recently.
shares, right? All this to say 0 shares of Zach Greinke.
I mean, it was like 2 weeks ago. He was playing the White Sox, and he's still getting, from time to time, he's inducing a lot of ground balls. I think in that outing, he had 13 ground balls, decent enough outing. But once again, I just think there's so many high upside arms. McClanahan, Burns, Cease, Michaelis, if you want to land on some of that. Max Fried before Severino. It's really hard for me to not play 2 of those guys. I mean, Tristan McKenzie, I definitely see a path for success for him, even though I don't want it from him. Josiah Gray I talked about. So many other pitchers on this slate, specifically with K percentages, that just make them so much more valuable. And Zach Greinke, yes, he gives you savings. But him, Rodriguez, that is just not going to be the path I take for today's slate.
Yeah, he induces a lot. It's not just ground balls.
Yeah.
So
like
let's
comas.
Or vomit, right? Let's look at Sonny Gray, the other Gray. All right. You talked about as far as Josiah when we opened this slate up in Washington, but Sonny Gray, 8,200 we have on DK, and not a ton of ownership, about just under 13% last I had projected here. So that's a workable number if you did want to get to him at that somewhat cheaper cost compared to the rest of the top end options.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused why Sonny Gray is giving us positive leverage at 8,200 and Tristan McKenzie's just kind of being completely written off. Sonny Gray's being written off compared to Tristan McKenzie. I think I said that correctly. Yeah, there we go. Found it. But a 31% K percentage now for Sonny Gray. I don't know what Minnesota's been doing to get some of these arms that just, I mean, Sonny Gray with Cincinnati had some stuff, but we're just starting to like find paths for Sonny Gray, for Chris Archer, Bailey Ober, who's never been my favorite pitcher. There's just guys that are figuring out ways to be successful again here. We saw a massive outing last time out for Sonny Gray, so maybe he ends up more popular than what we think. That same Detroit matchup, 10 strikeouts, 36.8 fantasy points. The real thing that stuck out to me was 95 pitches. He had been, capped around 84, 85 until that point. So it was only his fifth start, I believe. No, sixth start of the entire season. So maybe we start to see the leash lengthened here a little bit for him. And against this Kansas City team that just doesn't impress me very much at all against righties. 97 WRC plus, run of the mill, 134 ISO, whatever. Just a 21.1% strikeout rate. That's, I wish that were a little bit higher because that's top 10 in baseball in terms of avoidance. But Sonny Gray is a guy that I definitely want to be over the field to at 8,200.
All right, so now the Twins lineup is going to be put in perspective of where we talked about getting after a guy like Elvin Rodriguez and Bruce Zimmerman when you have Zach Greinke. And I know that you went through the Wikipedia, the history lesson, and this is new Zach, not old Zach, and it's hurting you. I get it. I got it. Like I felt that coffee shop level compassion.
Yeah. There wasn't that. You're
right, because we didn't have the guitar behind you. If we had that, people may have found it a little bit different, but you're going to gain a little more leverage here than the other stacks we talked about. It's just a matter of how much more you may like this matchup compared to what we talked with Zimmerman and Rodriguez. And even the ownership, last I checked, is just a little bit lower on our projection.
Flat leverage on Minnesota is just so beautiful. It's finally, there's an opportunity to roster some of these guys. And I'm always more enamored with this team when you get a guy like Buxton leading off, the best player in baseball. Don't at me. I just love him more than anything. It's been
good home run play. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying he's been struggling of late for a guy that, it came out of the gate as hot as what he did, down to a 208 average, but still 11 homers, 817 OPS, speed, power, utility, 5,800, now sub 6K. He's going to be popular as a one-off, so maybe get away from doing too much of that. I said I don't want to be doing a lot of those one-offs. Might be going down to like an Acuna to get a little bit different in that department, but I mean, this lineup has savings. It has high upside options at the top. You kind of have to make some interesting decisions for DraftKings purposes because you have the Royce Lewis, who one of the most highly touted prospects, 314 now in the show with 2 homers. Came out of the gate a little bit slow, but has started to flash some high upside that's going to, have him back in the line. What in God's green earth was that?
I'm sorry. That was me moving my chair to try to gain a little more foot room.
All right. I think that was sound the alarm because Royce Lewis is 2,400 and I get to roster him. I'm going to be getting to him. Carlos Correa. You have to kind of pick between the two of them at shortstop. Not very often you're forced into the one shortstop at the team for trying to figure out how to stack that up. But even Larnach, Garlick, I mean, you get those cheap guys at the back half of this lineup. 509 expected slugging for Larnach so far. Garlick, 794. Yep. I mean, we're just looking at guys that are going to provide some savings, have power upside against Greinke. 1 through 8. I am very, very, even Ryan Jeffers, 494 expected slugging on the season, 11.1% walk rate. I mean, we can go 1 through 9 with the Twins and finally flat leverage. You just got to know that you're not going to probably be able to play all of the chalky pitchers around a Minnesota stack. But as a Minnesota stan, there's no way that I'm going to get away from them today when for the first time in a long time, they aren't massively negatively leveraged on DK.
And I don't know how much you're going to look at with the Royals. You mentioned that earlier as far as just with Sonny Gray. So maybe there's more a matter of, doing something different.
Yeah, they're flat leverage as it stands right now. You can always play Sal Perez as a high upside catcher option, but he's been bad this year. 423 expected slugging here, 221 expected batting average. The hard contact numbers have come down. I mean, last year was such a ridiculous season for him. I think we kind of could expect some regression. It's nice to see just a 2.7% walk rate for a guy like that because Sal Perez getting 2 fantasy points for you isn't exactly it. You're looking for some bombs when you're paying up for him at catcher, but it's just hard to land on this team in any kind of a meaningful way. Sonny Gray has been so good. 211 expected batting average now through his 6 starts, 286 xWOBA. Not going to be for me.
All right, so we can move on now because this is going to be an interesting matchup here to look at. We talked about Stroman from kind of that mid-range option, but Cease right there at the top. So let's not bury that by any means and open up the combo here with Dylan Cease.
I mean, he's a really good option. He's got the highest top two pitcher percentage over on DK. On FanDuel, third, behind Corbin Burnes and Shane McClanahan. Once again, for FanDuel purposes, find some paths to 11K McClanahan. I know it seems like an overpay, but there's so many good value pieces that I think in FanDuel pricing's always been softer. It will continue to be softer. So finding paths to McClanahan would be the path that I take if I were playing even more on FanDuel. I'm playing a little bit, but not nearly enough to really affect me. DK is where I'm really focused today. And for those purposes, there's no way that I'm not going to get to a little bit of Dylan Cease. It's just I'm taking an aggressive overweight stance to Corbin Burnes and McClanahan, and I can't really find as much like as what the field is. 35% ownership on Cease. I'm just above half of that, so I'm around 20%. I think that that's about meaningful. He's a great option. He's got the highest top two pitcher percentage on this slate, but I just see Burnes against St. Louis right on right. Finally, thank God. If you can get by Gordon, if you can get by some of the lefties that'll be existing there from St. Louis, you could see a massive game for him. And McClanahan, just my big stand of the day. I'm going to be getting to tons of him. Harder for me to get on the field of 35% Cease.
All right, how much does that change when you can look at a little difference there in cost affecting all three of the top guys on FanDuel? I mean, look, you're not going to gain anything as far as leverage is concerned. This is the worst leverage score we have on FanDuel, but you could be under the 22.7% projected ownership we have there and still get to him a little bit.
Get to who? Sorry.
The same guy we were just talking
Dylan
about.
Cease. Yeah, Dylan Cease. I was looking over at the stack specifically there. I was just jumping the gun here.
All right. Well,
he's very popular for FanDuel purposes. I said 9,600. He's the most popular pitcher on the board there. Give me Corbin Burnes. Give me McClanahan. You should have some Cease if you're playing 150. Why wouldn't you? But I can't imagine being over 22% on him, even against this Cubs team.
So White Sox a little bit better as far as, where we have projected here, kind of in that middle range. Cubs kind of at the top of the bottom tier, if you will. So I don't know where you're working both of these stacks as far as, your 150s or bigger here.
Yeah, the White Sox are always a team with lots of upside. Marcus Stroman has never been my favorite fantasy pitcher, but he's always been pretty decent at avoiding a lot of damage. Now he's up to a 24.2% K percentage this year out of the middle of nowhere. That would be his career high mark. So I'm expecting some regression in that standpoint, unless he just came out and found something to some regard. That's why you're seeing positive leverage for him in the top pitcher stool, the most positively leveraged pitcher to get to at 1.2%. I'll have a little bit of him against this White Sox offense, but with Tim Anderson, you get the salary savings of an Andrew Vaughn, Jake Berger now batting third in this lineup. Yasmani Grandal, he's been awful this year, but he's going to find some positive regression, you would think. Maybe not, but Jose Abreu batting fourth. I mean, this is just a lineup where there's some high upside options. There's some cheap savings that exist up and down the lineup. Even Adam Engel, flat 2K on DraftKings today. Not my most enthusiastic vote of confidence to be rostering him. Don't really want to be digging into any Josh Harrison in the 9-hole or anything, but I think that there's enough upside here that against Stroman, I'll still have some shares. At the same time that his K percentage has been up, his ex-WOBA 343, that would be a career high number in that regard. Ex-WOBA at 433. So we're looking at some negative numbers alongside the increased K percentage. So Mr. 5'7", he's 5'7". That's just insane. Marcus Stroman, I could see it going both ways here. I'll have a little bit of Stroman, not anything over 6-7%. But I definitely will have a little bit of White Sox as well on the other side. Just don't see him being a big stand for me today.
It is cool, though, seeing the physics of somebody that height being able to leverage a ball that fast.
So you're like throwing the ball upward.
Yeah.
You got him, and then you have Bailey Ober, who's 6'10" and throws it with no heat either. It's very strange.
Well, yeah, that's like the 6'11.5" guy who refuses to get in the paint.
Oh yeah, we all have that. We all have that friend. I grew up with that friend. Shout out my best friend growing up, Matt Ford. Right. Shout out to him.
Exactly. All right. So last game for us, and again, started kind of with that Rays Yankees game where we just started to see a little bit of a decline. of book totals on there, and you work with projected totals with what you can. Last game in St. Louis, both of these teams under 4, Brewers at 3.8, Cardinals 3.4. So Burns and Michaelis, two guys that have been constant in conversation as far as options and pay up. And even as far as Miles, have you worked them in as far as a different play that you can work with, especially kind of in that middle range? Although at 9,400, it wouldn't be the pay up, it would just be countering ownership. So let's start with both of these guys. I don't know if 9,400 or how much 9,400 may place Michaelis out for more ownership than the 1% we have projected for the field. But the other play here might simply be working Burns in between Cease and McClanahan and trying to find some wiggle room there.
Oh, it sure is the play. 30.5% K percentage, sub 5% walk rate, a 414 expected slugging, 233 expected batting average, nearly a 40% hard hit percentage. And, from time to time that's come up and grabbed him there. We saw that Atlanta outing where he got a little bit shelled, gave up 2 homers. He had actually given up a home run in 4 of his last 5 outings until facing San Diego, got a little bit back on track, getting the ground balls. The K percentage is down a little bit. Obviously, I still think he's the best pitcher in baseball, and that makes it hard for me to think that I'm not going to roster a ton of him when he's about negative, like flat leverage in this kind of a spot. So that's kind of my approach to it. We saw 35.6 and 36.7% K percentage the last 2 seasons. I think we start seeing him get back to that kind of form eventually here. I look at the cutter. It's still doing what it's supposed to do. I don't want to say I don't have concerns, because I do to a certain extent. He hasn't been as elite this season, but he's still that guy in my opinion, or will get back to being that guy eventually here, in my opinion. And against St. Louis, you're looking at a team that's completely different against right-handed pitching as opposed to left-handed pitching. I know Goldschmidt's been very good. Sean V giving him a shout out in chat. But it's still just a St. Louis team that when you look at them against the split against lefties, a 141 WRC plus, by far the best in baseball. That actually drops to around a 101 WRC plus against lefties. So they're right middle of the road. They did get Nick Gorman up there to the bigs, and that's a guy now batting second for them. They put in some other lefties here in Dickerson, Lowell's Newtball from the left side there at 2K, Brendan Donovan. I called him Ray Donovan, I think accidentally the other day, or was about to.
Better than Roy Donovan, yeah.
Yeah, I know, yeah, that too. Brendan Donovan there, 3,600. I don't really have any interest in getting to St. Louis, but as far as Corbin Burns goes, maybe those lefties, they don't really matter to me here. None of them outside of Gorman are that worrisome. So Corbin Burns, all systems go is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely. Damn it. Did you get it at plus 6,000 for Goldschmidt, by the way? Before it dipped and tanked to plus 2,000?
No, I did not.
I'm surprised Ehrenberg didn't get that. And
I was gone Tuesday, Wednesday, and let me tell you, I didn't look at Jack Diddley squat in baseball.
Well, nobody's going to fault you for that. I was just curious if 2 weeks ago you got Goldschmidt at plus 6,000 for MVP.
That would have been fun. Wouldn't that been fun? That would have been fun.
That would have been very nice. Very nice. All right. Well, what about your boy Miles, though? Do you want any love for a guy that you've referenced so many times that you had to go back and forth on the last name?
Miles Michaelis. There we go. See what I did there? I'm an adult. He always has positive leverage in the top pitchers tool. That just feels like a foregone conclusion. He's always around 1%
tonight.
He's so expensive compared to what you've ever paid for Miles Michaelis in your entire life. He's 1%. So if you want to get to a little bit on DK, I'm getting to a little bit on DK, but how could you possibly make him a priority with the other arms on this slate? He's good at doing everything except for getting strikeouts, and that's a problem for fantasy. So 18.6% K percentage this season, just not a guy you're going to land on in a bunch of lineups. So I have a little, but that's about all it's going to be.
Yeah, 9,400. I mean, my goodness, you're right. As far as the
see, for FanDuel purposes, it's always interesting because I always kind of look at the two. That's kind of what I was referring to there, where you can get some Miles Michaelis in your life, 9,100, and he's 4% leverage you're looking at there. Getting to a little bit over there where sometimes the strikeouts can be nullified by the fact that if he goes 6, gets the quality start, gives you some different lineup construction from the top end. But there's so many good strikeout arms. I'm still looking at you, Shane McClanahan, that it makes it really hard for me to want to, on FanDuel, try to find paths to him.
Yeah, by the way, you laid it out earlier. McClanahan K prop is just there for the taking tonight. So
Smash.
I'm going to have to take that by all means. All right, Lil, on the other side here, and this is the last opportunity to throw in a couple of bats with both St. Louis and Milwaukee. Brewers against Miles, right? Going to be somewhat there in that middle range. St. Louis, though, is all the way at the bottom with the Yankees and Miami. So if you've stayed away from those two, I don't know what would jump out against Corbin Burnes tonight for St. Louis. It's probably be pardon me, more of a leverage play for Milwaukee.
I will say, shout out to Nick Gorman, 2,300 up against Corbin Burnes. I'll have a little bit of him there. He's not a complete write-off in that kind of a regard. The guy's just going to be special, I think, at the big league level. Lefty. They just needed any kind of lefties here. But at AAA Memphis this season, 34 games, 308, 367, 677 slash line. He strikes out a lot, 34% strikeout rate at AAA there, but he had 15 home runs as well. So he's going to be a boom bust option this entire season, so long as he stays up there. And now with Paul DeJong sent down, Sosa's been playing a little bit here. Donovan looks like he's going to get a lot of the nods at shortstop going forward against righties. But we'll see kind of what happens. Sosa batting ninth today, but Gorman is a special dude, 2,300. I think you can still roster him against Corbin Burnes. So that is really the only meaningful thing that I'm getting to. There's no Arenado in the lineup. Paul Goldschmidt is there, 5,200. If you wanted to get shares of him and Gorman together, 2-3 as a two-man, be my guest. But specifically Gorman, he's the one bat that I'm taking about 5-6% of. But otherwise, that's it. Milwaukee, looking at them, give me the lefties up against Michaelis. You've got Tellez, you've got Yelich, you've got the normal suspects in that kind of a regard. But full stacking them, not going to be a huge stand. Colton Wong might have revenge in his heart, but I don't think that really affects you long-term here. Colton Wong's so weird to see him in Milwaukee. I think this is his first time going into St. Louis. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but we'll see. This is going to be two teams that play each other a lot this season. We'll get used to it, but I think that Milwaukee, just a run-of-the-mill stack on this slate.
Who's got the higher boom bust percentage on the show for landing jokes? We may need a poll or just Jordan to judge jury executioner of that, because I
fucking suck today. I'm not funny at
no,
all.
I'm just saying overall. I'm curious about career or season. Let's look at season.
I'm not get off my lawn, Eytan Shander.
Today killed you. Today really hurt your percentage.
Yeah, no, I'm 0 for 6. I feel like everybody else in the lineup is smashing it, and I'm 0 for 6.
Well, you are part of a team. You can't, we can't take you away from that. We love you, of the three of us today. But yeah, I think today hurt your numbers.
There is no I in team, but there is me.
There is an I in Lindquist 2 times over. 3. Da-na-na-na. That's the
Eric,
fortune noise. 1,
Lindquist 2, 3 total.
There you go.
There. Okay, I had to count myself, and it's my own freaking name. That's how bad I am. Jordan Klein, hi.
Well, that means bye for you, Eric. At Eric Lindquist is man on Twitter at Shander Show. For me, hit the thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. Look, Eric just provided you a lot of analysis, and to win you some money, of course, takes some time. So all we ask in return is that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed, and also thank Jordan if you haven't already for putting up with myself and Eric. What is it? Still in the morning out in the West Coast. All right, we have a lot going on still. A lot of NBA content leading up to Game 7, so make sure you are hanging throughout the day here on the Awesemo channel, and we'll see you. Enjoy the games.